Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is a continuation of lesson 10.1 Trigonometric Identities. Hope you're all doing well. Okay, this is part 2. I will mainly focus on co-function identities, and others are in your book they're called negative angle identities, and in the pre-calculus book they're called odd and even identities. I gave you a hint about them with the others last time. The ones who have a tick, I'm kind of mixing between the Algebra 2 and the pre-calculus book. See, I have them both here and here. I'm kind of mixing between them because actually you should have taken it from the pre-calculus book, because Algebra 2 is lighter and it should be more advanced, as the Arabic department are taking from the pre-calculus. So I'm trying to mix the lessons. Will take time with me, no problem. We have a month to go for this chapter. We'll take our time to combine as much as possible questions from here and there until you end up with being a professional in identities, inshallah. So your book gave us these, that sine pi over 2 minus theta is equal to cosine theta. I proved it in the last video if you want to refer to it. And cosine pi over 2 minus theta equals sine theta, and give you tan pi over 2 minus theta equals to cotan theta. And obviously this one is dragged from here as this. كمان أكيد أنا لما أحط الكوتان هنا أحط التان هنا برضو they are equal. يعني كوتان مثلا for example 90 minus 45 is the same as tan 45, which is 1. We have these two also in the pre-calculus book. Sec pi over 2 minus theta is equal to cosec, and cosec pi over 2 minus theta is equal to sec. Remember, all these identities have started with 90 minus theta and not theta minus 90 for now. I'll go through this point deeply. All of these that were given were 90 minus theta. Okay? These three are in the book. These three you will also memorize because they are in the pre-calculus book. Regarding odd and even identities, or as called in your book negative angle identities, I explained those last time and I proved to you that sine negative theta is equal to negative sine theta because they're opposite signs, because this is an odd function, right? While cosine negative 45 was equal to cosine 45 and cosine negative 30 was equal to cosine 30 because this is an even function, unlike tan negative theta is equal to negative tan theta because they're opposite signs, because it's odd, and cotan negative theta, these three are not in your book but they are with us inshallah. Cotan negative theta is equal to negative cotan theta because it's an odd function, while cosec is equal to negative cosec because it's an odd function, symmetric about the origin only. Sec negative theta is equal to sec theta. Why? Because it's the reciprocal of cosine theta, and also its graph. If you remember the graph of the sec, we didn't go deep, I remember, with the sec, but we took them. The graph of the sec was also symmetric about the y-axis. I'll get it to you in a second. The sec. Here, this is the graph of the cosecant. Cosecant is symmetric about the origin. And if I rotate it 180 degrees about the origin, it will come back to its original shape. So this is an odd function. لكن ده symmetric about the y-axis. Sorry, my pencil is very thick. Symmetric about the y-axis. So the answers on the right are the same. يعني cosec pi is the same as cosec negative pi. Cosec 2 pi is the same as cosec negative 2 pi. زيه زي الجراف بتاع الكوزين. So over here in all of these, it's the opposite sign. كله negative 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 ما عدا اتنين بس. Which are the two? The cosine negative theta is equal to cosine theta, and sec negative theta is equal to sec theta. Because these are the only even functions. All the others are odd, and I've written it on the side, and here I wrote all the rest are odd functions. So you must memorize all of these as well. Please make a summary for your identities, collect them all together. Now, as I said, I have a very important point regarding co-function identities. First of all, these questions are not in your book, okay? It says, using co-function and odd and even identities, okay? Odd and even identities, or they're, as I said, negative identities. Find out, okay? find, and if they said, and it's kind of evaluate or find. Now, if tan theta is equal to 1.28, find cotan 90 minus theta. Okay, so it's this one. Cotan theta is equal to tan. Okay, no, actually I want this one. Cotan pi over 2 minus theta is equal to tan theta. Isn't it this one? Yeah, tan theta is equal to cotan pi over 2 minus theta. So if tan theta is 1.28, the answer directly will not take a second from you as 1.28. The problem will start now, and you need to think more deeply with me. If the question gave me tan 1.28, but they asked me to find cotan theta minus pi over 2 and not pi over 2 minus theta, theta minus pi over 2. Are these two equal to each other? This is the question. Is this equal to this? So I can directly say, so cotan theta minus pi over 2 is equal to 1.28, and I'm done. Because I have an identity here that tells me that cotan pi over 2 minus theta equals to tan theta. But I don't have an identity that says cotan theta minus pi over 2 is equal to tan theta. I'll drag it slowly to you. So it's switched, you'll have to open your eyes. Although the question takes a second to solve, you need your brain to think. As much as it's easy, you might make mistakes in it for tahsili or in your exam. So, is cotan pi over 2 minus theta equal to cotan theta minus pi over 2? This is a question that you should think. Are they the same? Like, I will go far more. If cotan 90 minus 45 equal to cotan 45 minus 90, this is just an example. It's not always 45. Any number, 30, 60, any number, 20. Is cotan 45 equal to cotan negative 45? Okay, yeah. Cotan at 45 is cosine over sine. Cotan here is 1. Cotan at negative 45 is negative 1, because 1 is positive and 1 is negative. So they're not equal. How can I make them equal? I have to put a negative sign. As I wrote, they are not equal. So I go back to negative identities, or odd and even identities. It says cotan negative theta is equal to cotan theta only if I put a negative sign. So negative 1 equals negative 1. So these two are not equal, and these two are not equal, and these two are not equal. So I came from down to up. So what do you expect the answer to be? Still 1.28? Okay. If tan theta is equal to 1.28, cotan pi over 2 minus theta is equal to 1.28 على عين والراس. But this one, I must put a negative beside it because these two are not equal. So the answer is negative 1.28. مظبوط? Okay. So now you will start thinking, wallahi, if they switched, I'll switch the sign of this. Okay, that's a good way of thinking. But sometimes that's not true. With which functions it's not true? Do I have a problem with cosine and sec? If the question came as cosine negative theta, it's the same as cosine theta. And if the question came as sec negative theta, it's the same as sec theta. What do I mean? And the cosine pi over 2 minus theta is the same as cosine theta minus pi over 2. There's no problem. If they switched in the cosine question, asking for a cosine, وقلبوا لي ده فأصبح بدل مثلا 45 أصبح negative 45, is there a problem? There's no problem because they are equal. With the cosine and the sec, there's no problem if they switch theta minus pi over 2 or pi over 2 minus theta because they're both equal. Are you getting this? My students always used to suffer at the beginning to understand this. I have plenty of questions to go through until inshallah you get it. Type. This question is saying if sine x is equal to negative 0.37. Fine, okay, here there's no problem. They didn't switch. It's 90 minus x, so the answer is the same as negative 0.37 because I have an identity that says that sine x, this is a co-function identity, let's say sine pi over 2 minus theta is equal to cosine. This one actually, cosine pi over 2 minus theta is equal to sine. So cosine pi over 2 minus theta, it's equal to the same value of the sine, and the answer directly is negative 0.37 without doing any effort. The problem is, When they come to ask me about cosine x minus pi over 2, I will have to open my eyes wide and think. طيب, they switch. Are these two equal or no? Does the cosine function get affected with switching pi over 2 minus x or x minus pi over 2? No, they don't get affected. Why they don't get affected? Because cosine theta is equal to cosine negative theta. فأنا مثلا هنا let's say this was 45. So cosine pi over 2 of cosine 90 minus 45 يعني cosine 45. هنا 45 minus 90 is cosine negative 45. And cosine 45 and cosine negative 45, they're both the same. ادي cosine 45, it's root of 2 over 2. Cosine negative 45 is root of 2 over 2. إذا السويتش في الكوزين وفي السك مش هيفرق معايا, وكده كده الانسر is negative 0.37. Only if they're asking for cosine and for sec. And they switched, well, they didn't switch, the answer is the same. Negative 0.37, you did not change its sign. Again, question number, these are not in your book, okay? I'm getting them from the pre-calculus book. So I wrote again here, if the equation is asking for cosine x minus pi over 2 or sec x minus pi over 2, we do not change the sign of the answer. مش هغير, اللي موجود هكتب الانسر بتاعه. Because cosine x minus pi over 2 is the same as cosine pi over 2 minus x, according to this identity. And sec x minus pi over 2 is the same as sec pi over 2 minus x, because of this identity. So again, this question, open your eyes. I don't want steps. The answer comes in 1 minute, in 1 second actually. But just open your eyes. Here it is switched, and it's a sign. So I'll put the opposite of this. The answer is the opposite sign of it. Switch the sign وخلصتي. Again, open your eyes. It is switched, and it's a tan, and tan is an odd function. So I'll put the opposite sign of this. Okay? Again. Others. Question number 7. If cosine is equal to 0.54, here there's no switch, nothing to worry about, the answer is the same directly, 0.54. If cosec, and here it's a sec function and we switched theta minus pi over 2, and I said the sec is even and it doesn't differ, switching with it will not differ, so this is the answer, and do not change its sign. Only in sec and in cosine, whether it's switched or not switched, the same answer as what's given. If cotan theta is equal to 0.16, find tan pi over 2 minus theta. There's no switch, so this is the answer according to cotan theta equals to tan pi over 2 minus theta. The answer is the same, 0.16. And the last one of these, if sine theta is 0.32, and here they switched, but it's a cosine. I'm a cosine, I do not get affected by this switch, and the answer is the same, 0.32, and do not change the sign. You can rewind if you wish and check 8 and 10, the ones I put stars at them. 8 and 10, and I think question number 4. 8 and 10 and 4, where it's a sec or a cosine. They're asking for a sec and a cosine, and they switched pi over 2 with x, and still I did not change the sign of what's given. I will add another video soon.